Welcome back to the Deep Dive. If you joined us for part one of this series, you already know we are on a clock.
A very specific clock.
We are operating under a countdown, 5,000 days.
Right.
That's the projected window, stretching from about mid-2036 to mid-2041.
Right. And in that window, the acceleration of artificial general intelligence and automation is, well, it's set to completely dissolve careers as we know them.
And that ushers in this thing that so many people are calling the age of abundance.
And that was really the focus of part one. We laid out the call to adventure, let's say.
Yes, guided by that heroic framework from thinkers like Brian Rommel, it was the urgent, necessary wake-up call.
But today, we pivot. We have to. We're moving from just recognizing the tech threat to preparing for the fallout, the emotional side.
The psychological fallout. This deep dive is all about navigating what the source material calls the ordeal.
That's a perfect word for it.
Because the last deep dive, we talked all about the economics, the inevitability of it. But this shift, it's not just about losing a paycheck, is it?
No, not at all. It's about this preemptive grief. Grieving the loss of an identity that is tied to your job.
Think about that. I mean, for you listening, your entire social structure, maybe your self-worth, your community, so much of it is built around what you do for a living.
And when that foundation just dissolves, well, the question becomes, how do you mourn a loss before it even properly happens?
That feels like the absolute crucial question. It's what separates, a successful transition from just societal crisis.
It is. How do we arm ourselves psychologically for something that's both terrifying and potentially utopian?
Because if we meet this age of abundance,
Yeah.
this post-scarcity world with just mass despair and rage,
Then the whole utopian promise just collapses. It collapses into what some of the allied texts call the useless class.
which is a terrifying thought.
It is. And that's why the source material grounds this journey, this psychological passage, in the most profound map for human loss we have.
Elisabeth Kubler-Ross and her 5 stages of grief. Okay, so before we dive into her work, let's quickly unpack that key concept from our last deep dive. I want to reinforce this heroic approach that Rommel champions.
It's so important. This isn't just a dry tech forecast.
No, it's treated like a modern myth. It uses Joseph Campbell's hero's journey as a navigation map for you, for the individual.
And it's a very clear map. We established the ordinary world.
Our current reality. Hustle culture, scarcity, job-defined identities.
Right. And we watched it get totally disrupted by the call of machines.
And the response to that call, which is so predictable and human, especially with this aggressive timeline, was the refusal of the call.
People just clinging to what they know, downplaying the scope of the change.
We share the data, the historical precedents. We listed 24 obsolete jobs from fullers who pounded wool to secretarial pools.
It's just hard to accept that your job, no matter how specialized you think it is, could be next.
It's the ultimate denial.
Exactly. And in part one, we also gathered our supernatural aid, our companions for the journey.
I loved this part. We looked at Viktor Frankl's man's search for meaning.
Logotherapy, the search for an intrinsic purpose.
Then Albert Camus's The Myth of Sisyphus, to understand effort beyond just, a measurable outcome.
And of course, Daniel Pink's drive to really hammer home that idea of intrinsic motivation over just toil.
We even set up a really tangible action plan. It was supposed to kick off January 1st, 2026.
Right. Time for healing, for reflection, strategic experimentation with skills.
Deepening social integration and, crucially, preserving wisdom through things like savewisdom.org.
Which, for anyone who missed it, is this massive online archival project. It's about ensuring knowledge isn't lost in this transition. So that was the foundation.
That was the preparation.
Yeah.
But you said the timeline is accelerating.
It's accelerating faster than even the source material anticipated, and that's forcing this psychological hurdle into sharp relief right now.
How so?
We're looking at AGI prototypes by 2025, sophisticated humanoid robots ready for deployment by 2026.
That's just around the corner.
And then superintelligence optimizing global resources maybe by 2030. This isn't a decade away.
So the key takeaway is that we can't wait for the jobs to disappear before we deal with the emotional fallout.
We can't. The grief has to start now. It has to be preemptive.
Wow. Okay. So if part one was about accepting the call and getting over the refusal, then this, right now, part two, is about facing the inmost cave.
And preparing for the ordeal.
We're talking about the grieving process,
Hmm.
the self-imposed necessary grief over the end of almost all jobs and careers as our primary source of identity.
And the framework for navigating that existential bereavement, this preemptive career eclipse, is Elisabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages.
Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
DABDA. Her model, which was forged in the shadow of mortality, becomes our compass for surviving this.
Okay, let's get into it.
Hmm.
So, to really understand why this model, which was originally for patients with a terminal diagnosis, is the perfect tool for this death of a career, we have to look at the architect herself.
We do.
Who was Kubler-Ross? What drove her to this revolutionary approach to human suffering?
Well, Elisabeth Kubler-Ross, she was born July 8th, 1926, in Zurich, Switzerland. And honestly, from her very first breath, she was a testament to resilience.
Grieving.
She was a triplet, weighing just 2 pounds at birth, and she survived against, what were just formidable medical odds for that time.
Wow. So that experience with fragility, with the fight to survive, it must have influenced her.
Undeniably, it shaped her entire life's work.
And that theme of fighting against a predetermined fate, it seems to have continued throughout her life. She faced resistance at home, too, right?
Absolutely. Her father was a very strict, controlling businessman. He was dead set against her going into medicine.
He wanted her to be a secretary.
He pushed her towards what he thought was respectable work, but she was. She was fiercely independent.
So what did she do?
Undeterred, she went out and volunteered. In post-World War II, refugee camps all across Europe.
Oh.
She witnessed the horrors of the Holocaust firsthand. She was serving people who had suffered just unimaginable loss.
So she had this deep, hands-on understanding of mass suffering and trauma before she even formally became a psychiatrist.
Exactly. It's like she was destined to challenge the status quo. She eventually emigrated to the U.S. in 1958.
After she got married.
Right. And she completed her residency at Manhattan State Hospital. And it was there that she ran right into the medical culture of the time toward the dying.
Which was not good.
It was profoundly dehumanizing. Dying patients were isolated. They were ignored, actively avoided by staff. Their deaths were treated like a clinical failure.
Instead of a natural part of the human journey.
Precisely. And for someone who had already been so immersed in the trauma of war, that must have been just a massive shock.
So how did she go from just observing that systemic failure to creating a framework that literally changed medicine forever?
Her method was, by the standards of the late 1960s, just truly radical.
What did she do?
When she moved to positions at the University of Colorado and later Billings Hospital in Chicago, she started these educational seminars where she interviewed terminally ill patients on stage.
On stage? In front of people?
In front of packed lecture halls full of doctors, nurses, clergy. It was astonishingly intimate.
And exposed. I can't even imagine.
It was actively breaking taboos, bringing the reality of death out of the shadows, humanizing it, treating mortality as a teachable moment.
Letting the patients teach the professionals.
That was it, exactly. She faced immense resistance, of course. Colleagues accused her of exploiting the vulnerable.
But she held firm.
She did. She believed that only through open conversation could the medical community get over its own denial about death.
And all of that work, all those interviews, culminated in her landmark book.
Precisely. Her 1969 bestseller, On Death and Dying, it drew from over 200 of those patient interviews.
And it didn't just sell millions of copies.
No, it challenged the entire medical culture. And most importantly, it introduced the 5-stage model. The impact was immediate. It was massive.
She became a global figure. Time magazine's Woman of the Decade in the 70s.
And the book is, it's universally credited with birthing the modern hospice movement across the entire world.
But her work didn't stop there. She kept expanding on these ideas.
Oh, absolutely. She wrote over 20 books. She was constantly applying the framework to new areas of loss beyond just a personal terminal diagnosis.
Like in Death, the final stage of growth.
Yes, in 1975, where she framed dying as a transformative experience, not just an ending, or Living with Death and Dying in 81, which was specifically about children's grief.
And then her own memoir, The Wheel of Life, where she reflected on her own losses.
Grounding the theory in her own lived experience, yes.
And critically, even after she passed away in 2004, her work's application just kept broadening.
Which brings us to On Grief and Grieving, published in 2005. She co-authored it with David Kessler, and it came out posthumously.
And that book is the one that really applied the stages to broader experiences, right? Like divorce, losing a home, or a job.
Exactly. And this is the book that cemented a key detail that's crucial for us today. the nonlinearity of grief.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What does the synthesis say about the model's structure? When we talk about these 5 stages, is it a strict checklist that you, the listener, have to follow?
No, that is the essential point. Kubler-Ross herself vehemently, constantly stressed the flexibility of the process.
So they're observational.
They're observational. They emerged from her dialogues with patients. They were never meant to be a rigid prescription.
How did he describe them?
As fluid, often overlapping, recurring, or even skipped entirely. It all depends on the individual's context, their culture, their personality.
So they're less like 5 locked rooms you have to pass through one by one.
And more like 5 default settings your brain cycles through when it's faced with, intolerable news.
They're defense mechanisms.
Exactly. Defense mechanisms against psychic overload. They pace how you assimilate trauma. So if you try to force yourself through the stages, you're missing the entire point.
The goal is recognizing where you are, not checking a box.
Precisely. And that's why the model has endured so well outside of medicine, in things like corporate restructuring.
Right. The Kubler-Ross change curve.
Right. Critics in psychology will say the stages aren't perfectly universal or sequential, and that's true. But the model's power to normalize emotional upheaval is just unmatched.
So for a company, it helps leadership understand that denying a layoff isn't a character flaw.
It's a predictable, natural stage of grief that you have to manage with empathy.
And for you, listening now, understanding this curve means you can recognize the collective psychological landscape that's going to define the next 5,000 days.
That's the map.
Okay, now we get to the absolute core of this deep dive. We're going to take that Kubler-Ross framework and apply it directly to the existential threat of the 5,000-day countdown.
We have to identify where we as a global workforce are right now, emotionally, psychologically.
So we start with stage 1, denial.
Which is the necessary initial shock absorber. The core concept is just, this isn't happening.
It's adaptive, right? It protects you from total psychic overload.
Exactly. It lets reality seep in gradually, gives your system time to adjust.
But how does that actually show up when we're talking about AI in the end of job titles? It's not as concrete as a terminal illness.
No, it's not. In the context of automation, denial shows up as extreme minimization.
So personalizing it.
Very personalized. The internal dialogue is, AI won't replace my role, my knowledge is too nuanced, or, oh, that's just Silicon Valley hype, it won't affect my job in plumbing or nursing.
People cling to this idea of job exceptionalism.
Desperately, even if, an objective analysis shows that 70% of their daily duties are routine, standardized, and therefore perfectly automatable.
And the data from the source backs this up, right?
Yeah.
This isn't just a guess. This mindset is widespread.
It is the prevailing and dominant mindset right now. It's creating this massive societal blind spot.
I mean, McKinsey's 2023 reports predict 30% of work hours will be automated by 2030.
Which is right around the corner.
And yet, the surveys in the source material show that 70% of the working population are still in some form of denial about it.
And that prolonged denial, it isolates you, and it crucially delays the essential adaptation we need to be doing in these 5,000 days.
This feels like a recurring theme in history, this kind of mass refusal.
It is. The source draws a really powerful parallel to the Industrial Revolution.
The weavers.
The 19th century weavers who just dismissed the power looms. According to historians like E.P. Thompson, they minimized the threat. They believed their hand skill was superior.
Until the sudden and total reality of mass, structural unemployment hit them.
Exactly. It's this deep human tendency to dismiss paradigm-shifting change until the consequences are literally in the room with you.
So if denial is our default setting, what's the strategy? You can't just tell people to stop being in denial.
No. The Kubler-Ross process requires what she called empathetic confrontation, education and exposure, but without coercion or panic.
So for you listening, that means proactive self-education, AI literacy programs, vulnerability audits.
It means forcing yourself into an honest confrontation with reality, and that is the exact moment when the hero's refusal is finally broken.
And it forces you to cross the threshold from the ordinary world into the adventure of transformation.
That's the first step.
Okay, so as that denial starts to fracture, as the reality of the timeline sinks in, that protective veil tears.
And then comes stage 2.
Anger. The emotionally charged stage. The, why me? I followed all the rules. This is unfair.
And it is unfair from that perspective. This anger is displaced rage. It stems directly from vulnerability and that sudden, shocking realization of powerlessness.
When control over your livelihood is stripped away, your brain just defaults to fight or flight. This is the fight.
It is, and Kubler-Ross noted that while this anger can be cathartic, it externalizes the pain, it also risks real damage if it's not channeled.
So where does that fury go when we're talking about the career eclipse? Who is it aimed at?
It's aimed at everyone and everything. It lands on employers.
They prioritize bots over me.
Right. Or on the big tech firms, or on the perceived failures of society, of government.
And historically, we've seen this play out literally and violently. The source brings up the Luddites.
Smashing the looms in the 1800s. Or, more recently, those incidents in the 1980s, Michigan auto workers physically smashing the new robots on the assembly line.
Viewing them as invaders.
And the modern equivalents. Well, they aren't always smashing hardware, but the emotional intensity is the same. It just translates to online toxicity.
And intense social polarization.
Exactly. People raging in online forums against the AI overlords, demanding regulations, and we have to recognize the deep physiological connection here.
The connection between job loss and your actual health.
It's profound. Longitudinal studies show this chronic displaced anger leads to elevated cortisol, hypertension.
And tragically, the source highlights how it amplified health crises, like the opioid epidemic in the Rust Belt after those sudden factory closures.
The loss of dignity is literally making people sick.
So the goal is not to suppress this anger. It's to harness it, redirect that energy.
You have to. The Kubler-Ross approach is to validate the feeling. You have to acknowledge the genuine unfairness of the shift, but without validating the destructive impulse.
And then you redirect that energy.
You redirect it toward advocacy, systemic action. The source suggests this anger, once it's validated, can transform the hero's road of trials into meaningful alliances.
It can fuel new unions or political movements.
Or demands for policy, like tech taxes to fund a universal basic income. Anger becomes the fuel for necessary change.
It becomes productive.
It has to. So if anger is the fight response, bargaining is the plea. It's the Hail Mary.
If I just do this, spare me moment.
Exactly. If I sacrifice X, will you spare me Y? It's this attempt to postpone the inevitable through negotiation or promises, often infused with guilt.
And applied to the job market, this is the frantic, desperate scramble to upskill.
Yes. If I learn coding right now, or if I get a data science certificate, I'll be safe. The wave will pass me by.
We see the data on this, right?
Oh, absolutely. The source shows that after ChatGPT went mainstream, enrollment in AI and data science courses on platforms like Coursera and edX surged over 500%.
It's a global attempt to negotiate with the future.
It is.
But wait a second. Learning to code, that sounds proactive, not futile. Isn't calling that bargaining a little cynical?
That's a really important distinction. It's not cynical if the effort is focused and strategic, but it is bargaining when it's just frantic and undirected.
When it operates under the illusion that you can win against exponential change just through more effort.
Precisely. The effort is often Herculean, sleepless nights, course fees, but the foundational system is shifting too fast.
The historical parallel here is fascinating. The lamplighters.
The 1920s lamplighters who tried to bargain for electric training.
But their roles faded away anyway, not because of a specific skill, but because the entire infrastructure changed.
They were negotiating with the wrong variable. And that's the danger.
It has to lead to just profound exhaustion, burnout.
It invariably does. Kubler-Ross warned that bargaining is temporary. It cannot sustain itself. True resolution requires acceptance. Over-bargaining is driven by fear, not by purpose.
It's the hero's futile detours before they realize they have to actually enter the inmost cave.
Exactly. Societally, bargaining can be productive. It can lead to human-AI collaborations, these hybrid roles. But it's only a bridge. It's not the destination.
So when that frantic energy of bargaining fails or you realize it's only temporary, you descend into stage 4.
Depression.
This is the profound enveloping sorrow. The moment where the question becomes, if my life isn't defined by my career, what's the point?
And this is often the most painful, the most isolating stage. Kubler-Ross was really careful to distinguish between two types here. There's reactive depression, which is about past losses, like losing your job last month. But what's more relevant for us, for this deep dive, is preparatory depression.
Sorrow over future voids.
Yes. Grieving the loss of the life, the identity, the future that will no longer exist because of abundance. And her prescription was always supportive presence and active listening.
Not forced cheerfulness or toxic positivity.
Never.
When you apply this to automation, what are the clinical and societal costs of this stage?
They're staggering. Longitudinal studies consistently show clinical depressive symptoms in over 40% of the long-term unemployed.
And the threat of automation alone is enough to trigger this.
Oh, yes. The source notes it leads to this profound erosion of self-worth, social withdrawal. It amplifies midlife crises across all white-collar sectors.
Because if you define yourself entirely by your toil, the loss of that toil feels like
The loss of self, it leads to that question of, am I still worthwhile?
This is why Frankl's logotherapy is such a critical companion for this part of the journey.
It's essential. This stage requires active empathy, creating space for mourning that lost economic identity. This is where the wisdom from part 1 becomes your toolkit.
You have to actively integrate Frankl's search for meaning outside of work.
And Csikszentmihalyi's concept of flow, finding pursuits that lift that veil of depression.
Because this descent in the hero's journey is the supreme ordeal. It's what forges resilience.
It leads to the apotheosis, that critical moment of transformation where the hero understands their new role in this new world.
Which brings us to the ultimate goal, the gateway to successfully navigating the age of abundance. Stage 5, acceptance.
Which brings a sense of peace, an energized realism. It's not necessarily happiness or joy.
It's the calm ability to say, okay, reality has changed, I'm ready to face it.
It is. Acceptance, in Kubler-Ross's view, it honors the loss, but it simultaneously envisions forward motion. It's the gateway to growth.
Because all that psychic energy you were spending on resistance,
in denial, anger, bargaining,
and on sorrow, in depression,
is finally liberated. And you can channel it into constructive engagement with the new reality.
So what does that look like practically when we're talking about the end of job categories?
It looks like a definitive pivot, a pivot to purpose-driven passions, and developing what the source calls an identity beyond title.
You release the corporate role, the economic function, as the primary definition of who you are.
You do, and the historical parallel here is really compelling. Think about the millions of women after World War II.
Displaced from factory work when the men came home.
Right. But they channeled that displacement, that loss, into organizing and building the feminist movement, demanding social reforms.
So today, this psychological acceptance is what unlocks the renaissance that's promised by the age of abundance.
It is. But the source material is very clear on one thing.
It has to be active acceptance.
Not passive resignation. That's a critical distinction.
Passive resignation leads to that useless class idea. Ennui.
Right. Active acceptance means engaging with the new opportunities that post-scarcity creates. In the hero's return phase of the journey, this is what yields the elixir.
The liberated, purposeful self. Psychologically ready for a life that isn't defined by wage labor.
Ready to be, not just to do.
Okay, we have mapped the emotional terrain. Now we need the tactical roadmap. If we know this transition is coming, and we know the grief stages are predictable,
then the most rational, the most empowering thing to do is to fortify yourself before the grief sets in too deeply.
Exactly. So let's unpack this comprehensive, proactive, pre-loss strategy for you, the listener.
So the foundational idea from the source material is this. You need to start treating your life like a diversified portfolio.
And your current job income is just one asset among many.
One that is becoming increasingly volatile, so you have to hedge against the future. And the first step is the vulnerability audit.
And how do you do that without just falling right back into the denial stage?
By being ruthlessly objective. You have to list all of your daily, weekly, monthly job tasks, every meeting, every report.
Everything.
And then you score them on a scale of 1 to 10 based on automation risk. Repetitive tasks are high risk. Tasks requiring novel coordination, deep human empathy, or radical creativity are low risk.
And the source suggests using free tools like, will robots take my job, to benchmark this.
You have to. It forces an honest, quantifiable confrontation with reality. It's the only thing that really combats stage 1 denial.
So once that cold, hard reality sinks in, the 12-week phased plan kicks in.
An intensive abundance building commitment, just 5 to 10 hours a week.
Let's start with weeks 1 through 4, financial prep.
This is all about maximizing your financial resilience. The core goal is building a massive safety net, a 12 to 18-month emergency fund.
Not the traditional 6-month one.
No, that was designed for cyclical unemployment, not structural collapse. And you need to automate it. Use apps like Acorns to remove the friction.
And at the same time, you're aggressively reducing debt.
High-interest debt. Use the snowball or avalanche method. And start responsibly exploring passive income streams, dividend stocks, index funds, peer-to-peer lending.
The goal is to remove financial anxiety. because that directly fuels the intensity of depression and anger later on.
It does. Then you transition.
Weeks 5 through 8. Skill diversification. This feels like a smart way to channel that bargaining energy.
It's the productive channeling of that energy. The difference is strategic focus versus frantic upskilling.
So this is where you enroll in those free MOOCs on 8X or Khan Academy.
But you focus on adjacent complementary fields. If you're a writer, you pivot to AI prompt engineering or ethics, not just, basic coding.
And crucially, the plan mandates daily, intentional practice with AI integration tools.
Right. Using systems like Grammarly or Jasper to augment your current work, you have to track your efficiency gains. You are not trying to beat the AI, you're trying to master its use.
To become that indispensable human-AI interface. And finally, weeks 9 through 12, network expansion. This is how you build your community of allies for the journey.
This is social resilience. You need to join professional groups, specifically looking for ones on LinkedIn for your current industry, plus groups focused on the future of work.
Attend virtual webinars. The target is ambitious. 3 informational interviews a month.
With people whose careers seem resilient, adaptable, AI adjacent, you are actively mapping out your escape routes and building a network that isn't tied to your dying job title.
And this isn't a one-and-done thing. The source recommends quarterly check-ins.
For psychological tolerance building, this is vital. The source calls them life simulations.
You dedicate a full day every quarter to practicing jobless mode.
Pursue hobbies, volunteer, focus on family, just engage in unstructured play. And then you journal about your emotional responses.
You're building tolerance for the unstructured time and the potential existential void that the age of abundance will bring.
So you lessen the shock of depression when it comes. The whole plan is essentially integrating the Kubler-Ross model directly into your prep.
Asking yourself every week, what signs of denial do I see in myself? Or am I channeling my frustration productively?
By normalizing the emotions early, you shift from reactive grief to proactive empowerment.
Which is the entire point of the hero's preparation before crossing the threshold.
Precisely. #2. Identifying your replacement and riding the wave.
Okay, now let's switch to operational intelligence. Spotting the encroachment of automation early is the key.
We have to pivot strategically.
So the source provides 10 specific indicators that signal automation is coming for your role, plus the adaptation strategy to ride the wave. Let's break these down.
This is your operational guide to avoiding being stuck in denial. The red flags to watch for today.
Okay, indicator 1, high repetitive task percentage. If 70% or more of your duties are routine data entry, standard reports, basic scripts.
The strategy is you have to proactively automate your own routines. Use no-code AI agents. Upskill in oversight and management.
Don't perform the task. Become the process optimizer.
The one who trains and manages the bots, not the one doing the manual digital labor.
Indicator 2, paid per hour for digital work.
A huge red flag. Time-based pay signals a scalability problem because an algorithm can work instantly for pennies.
So the strategy is to decouple your income from time.
Shift to value-based contracts. Emphasize outcomes, not hours tracked. Build a portfolio.
Indicator 3, your role is a digital laborer. Basic processing without high-level strategy.
You have to elevate. Get certified in advanced data analytics. Stop being the person who processes the data and become the person who consults on the meaning and the ethical implications of the AI's output.
Indicator 4, tasks emphasize doing over thinking. You're paid for speed and execution, not insight or innovation.
You have to actively seek out creative projects. Launch a side hustle that's all about genuine problem solving. This is where you use Pink's drive as your shield.
Right. Mastery, autonomy, and purpose.
Exactly.
Indicator 5, repetitive and rule-based duties. Anything that follows a rigid, predictable pattern.
Your path here is to learn the language of automation itself. Learn foundational scripting, like Python. Or transition into the booming sector of bot maintenance and system auditing.
Indicator 6, the role involves machine learning or robotics directly. If the tech is already being piloted in your field.
Do not avoid it. Volunteer for the pilot programs. Get specialized ML certifications. The goal is to specialize in human-robot interfaces, to become the expert bridge.
Indicator 7, AI tools are already fixing or enhancing your output. Things like generative fill or predictive text are supplanting the precision you were once paid for.
Then you have to become a master user of the advanced tools. Midjourney for visuals, advanced LLMs for writing. Stop doing the basic precision work and specialize in the bespoke human empathy enhancements. The artistry.
Indicator 8, your company is testing AI models internally. shadowing human roles before a public rollout.
This is an extreme warning sign. You have to use that information. Volunteer for the testing phase, understand the model's limits, and then network aggressively.
And prepare your resume now for AI-adjacent positions.
Not for the role that's currently being replaced.
Indicator 9. A high vulnerability score on assessment tools. If a site like "Will robots take my job?" rates your role over 70% at risk.
Use that score as pure motivation, not a death sentence. Diversify immediately. Intensive boot camps in resilient fields, healthcare ethics, creative AI development, localized craft services.
And finally, indicator 10, a quantitative or analytical focus with ML augmentation. Analysts, accountants, data scientists.
You have to integrate the most advanced ML tools directly into your workflow and push hard for higher-level decision-making authority.
So the evolution is from being an analyst who reports the data
to being the high-level decision-maker and strategist who acts on the augmented data. You have to climb the value chain.
That was a phenomenal breakdown of the personal strategy. But as we've said, this isn't just an individual journey, it's societal. We need community.
We absolutely do. Kubler-Ross's enduring genius wasn't just identifying the stages, it was creating those safe, radically open seminars for patients to share their stories.
That sense of community demystified mortality. It fostered empathy.
And we have to mirror that approach proactively to preempt the automation job loss crash.
So we create our own versions of those seminars. This source calls them abundance transition groups.
It's the mastermind model, adapted for this specific existential economic change. They should be proactive support circles, using existing platforms like Meetup or Discord.
And the key is consistency.
Bi-weekly meetings, 90 minutes, with a defined structure that encourages open sharing, just like Kubler-Ross did.
So what would a typical meeting look like to achieve this goal of preemptive grief processing?
It has to start with an emotional check-in. Members openly state, what stage of grief do I feel I'm in this week? Denial, bargaining.
It normalizes the pain right away.
Exactly. Then you rotate storytelling about career pivots, you share specific adaptation strategies, maybe invite external experts.
And the size of the group is crucial for trust.
You have to keep them intimate. The source says 8 to 12 members is ideal. You can organize them by industry, but the real emphasis is on the shared psychological experience.
So what are the collective benefits of forming these groups now?
They are multifold. First, you normalize grief early, which dramatically accelerates the move toward acceptance.
Second, you're building social and professional networks for the future. They act as early warning systems.
And third, you co-create resources, shared skill maps, UBI advocacy platforms. We saw this during the Great Depression. Mutual aid societies were essential in buffering the crash.
So in the Hero's Journey framework, these abundance transition groups are the essential allies on the road to trials.
They transform an isolating individual ordeal into a powerful communal apotheosis. #2, the pivotal role of grief in the hero's arc.
Okay, let's zoom out one last time. What does this all mean for the massive shift we're tracking in the next 5,000 days? Why is putting Kubler-Ross's stages into a tech forecast so monumental?
Because it demystifies the emotional pain. It empowers navigation instead of just reactive paralysis.
On an individual level, it's about psychological health.
Career coaching is already adapting this, using journaling to combat denial, exercise to channel anger, mental health nets to ease depression.
And societally, it gives policymakers a language, a framework to deal with the mass displacement.
Exactly. Policies can be designed around the stages. Education programs combat denial. Organized forums can vent anger constructively into advocacy.
It ensures the age of abundance isn't just derailed by mass psychological trauma.
You're right, and it connects perfectly back to the heroic path from part 1.
The stages deepen the supreme ordeal, making the suffering purposeful.
Acceptance, driven by Frankl's logotherapy, ensures we keep seeking meaning. Pink's intrinsic motivation finds fertile ground after depression. This preparation ensures that when this all arrives, it's met not with ennui, but with rebirth and resilience.
The goal of the 5,000-day countdown is to move us all toward active acceptance.
To make sure the age of abundance truly feels like a human renaissance. #tagoutro.
We have mapped the emotional terrain of the coming career eclipse in a lot of detail, using Kubler-Ross's profound framework to guide us past denial and toward active acceptance.
We explored how to conduct that necessary vulnerability audit of your current role.
and outlined a robust 12-week plan to fortify your life, moving from financial resilience to skill diversification and network expansion.
And crucially, we provided those 10 specific indicators and ride-the-wave strategies to help you spot automation coming before it arrives.
We are firmly on this journey together. The goal, as the source states so clearly, is not to get washed under by the wave of change,
but to learn to stand up on our boards and ride this wave, finding a deeper, more resilient sense of self and purpose in the process.
The next 5,000 days demand self-honesty, they demand communal support, and they demand rigorous psychological preparation.
They really do.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's a provocative thought for you to explore. If your identity is tied absolutely to the concept of work, to the title, the daily toil, the paycheck, and that concept is dissolving,
what fundamental intrinsic values beyond title or toil will you rely on to find meaning and define your purpose in a post-scarcity future?
That's the question to sit with.
So begin integrating these stages into your weekly self-assessment. Map your current stage, seek out your allies, and commit to that 12-week preparation plan.
Next time, we move beyond preparation and grief and into the active resilience builders. We'll paint a detailed, practical vision of what life truly looks like when the age of abundance is fully realized.
It's going to be a fascinating discussion.
We will be diving into part 3 of this series called You Have 5,000 Days, Navigating the End of Work as We Know It. Part 3, The Player Piano.
I can't wait.
We look forward to having you for that deep dive. Until then, stay aware and stay purposefully curious.